Welcome into another episode of Locked On Phillies. With the Phils and Braves rained out last night, well, we don't have a game to react to. So we're going to build our way too early playoff rotation for the Phillies. Yeah, it's a harder exercise than you think.
You are Locked On Phillies, your daily Philadelphia Phillies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, this is Locked On Phillies. I'm your host, Connor Thomas. Thank you so much for joining us today. We come to you as part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. You may know me from some of my other work in the sports talk space. I've been on air over at 97.5 The Fanatic doing sports talk radio here in Philly for about 5 years. I've been a credentialed Philadelphia Phillies media member for the last 4 seasons, and this is now my 4th year as the host of Locked On Phillies. Please make sure you're rating and reviewing. If you're checking us out in podcast form, we're available everywhere you get your podcasts. And we're also available on YouTube. If you haven't watched on YouTube yet and you do so, well, hit that subscribe button for Locked On Phillies, our YouTube channel. If you could, it'll get you notifications when new episodes are posted, so it helps you out. It's also free and easy, and it helps us out as well. So the Phillies didn't play last night. They got rained out. It was pouring in the city of Philadelphia. The weather looks much better today, and they've got a day-night doubleheader scheduled. We're going to preview the day-night doubleheader in our final segment of today's episode. We're also going to get a bit of a quick standings check-in in the middle because last night technically an off day. You know, if you follow Locked On Phillies, that on off days, we do like to peek in at the standings and look for some nuances of how the Philadelphia Phillies are still atop the baseball world. But an exercise that I want to do first is building out the potential playoff rotation for your fighting Phils. So this comes from a conversation that I had on the radio yesterday where we were discussing Ranger Suarez's sterling start against the Braves in Game 1. 6 innings, none earned, 4 hits allowed, 8 strikeouts, 3 walks. Like, the walks you'd like to see cut down. The efficiency needs to be a little bit better, but still, his last 4 starts, he's got a 1.01 ERA with 25 strikeouts. Like, he's pretty darn good. Oh, by the way, 4-0 in those starts. So my question was, are we seeing the Ranger Suarez we saw last year in that really hot stretch to start the season? And if so, well, has he jumped some of these guys as far as standing with the Philadelphia Phillies? And the best way to do that is to look ahead to a potential playoff series and say, okay, well, who would I want taking the ball Game 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? So obviously, Zack Wheeler is getting the ball first. There's no debating that. There's no changing that. If you have a different answer, it is the wrong answer. Zack Wheeler is getting the ball first and first and first in any postseason series that the Philadelphia Phillies play, right? He's the guy. He's your ace. He's the Cy Young candidate above all other Cy Young candidates on this team. He's getting the ball. He's been here. He deserves it. There's no doubt in my mind that Wheeler's won. You may look at Lazardo and say, hey, I think Jesus Lazardo's throwing the ball better. You could look at Ranger and say over the last 4 games, his stats have been better than both Wheeler and Lazardo. I'd say, yeah, that's great. Wheeler's still getting the ball because he's Zack Wheeler and because that's what he does and because he's been awesome in the postseason. And you just kind of don't overthink this one, all right? This is a no-brainer. He is number 1 in the Philadelphia Phillies current rotation and playoff rotation. But here's where it gets tricky. Here's where you have to start making some tough decisions. Because let's say the Phillies are the home team in a 5-game series. Well, now you have the home and away conversation that you have to figure out. We don't have enough data for it at this point, but we know that in past years, Christopher Sanchez has been much better at home than he has been on the road. He's not been up to the level of what Ranger has been the last 4 starts, what Wheeler has been all year, what Lazardo has been all year, though. And that's not saying Christopher Sanchez hasn't been bad. He's had a good year. But we had very, very high expectations for him, and he hasn't really hit that ceiling yet. And he doesn't have to, if I'm being honest, right? You'd like to see him. You'd like to see a little bit more out of him. But we talked about the bar set for Ranger Suarez and why he's not going to get the proper commendation, we'll say, for his efforts on the mound against the Braves and his efforts through the past couple of weeks because they're kind of par for the course. He's not going to get the credit. So Christopher Sanchez has not been bad, right? But he's just not going to get the credit of like him meeting expectations or exceeding expectations because the bar was set so high and has been held high by Wheeler and Lazardo. So if it's up to me, I'm throwing Jesus Lazardo game 2 because I want Jesus Lazardo to go game 2. Like I do. I just want him in the top 2 guys. And I feel very comfortable that you can come out of that. Like, you don't want to go down 2-0. God forbid something happens with the Wheeler start. You need to throw your best 2 arms. And I'm not throwing Christopher Sanchez at home just to throw him at home, to put Lazardo in a situation where maybe, you're down 0-2 and he's got to stave off eliminations. Like, no, I want him comfortable. It'll be his first time pitching in the postseason with this team, and he didn't get a lot of postseason experience with the Marlins or the A's prior to that. So I would like to see Lazardo throw game 2. And then game 3 is also very, very tricky because then in this hypothetical series, you would shift to the road. You've got your best 2 pitchers already through, but you have 2 stone-cold killers in Christopher Sanchez and Ranger Suarez. Just Sanchez has been significantly better at home. I think you got to throw Ranger Suarez in game 3. Like, I think you have to, right? Now, by the way, this all flips. Christopher Sanchez, I think you could throw first if it's a series where you're the underdog, where the first 2 games are somewhere else. I think Sanchez could get the ball in game 3. But really, Ranger's been the 3rd best pitcher on this team for about a month now. And I think, or maybe higher than 3rd best pitcher. And Christopher Sanchez just kind of, he's been good. He's been great. He hasn't been elite. And the other 3 guys in this conversation are elite. So I guess I got to go Ranger Suarez 3, Sanchez 4. And you might say now, okay, Wheeler, Lazardo, Ranger, Sanchez. I feel good about that, right? Those are pretty much even ranks of what their numbers show and what their performance shows this year. But here's where it gets tricky. You have more people in this than just those 4 guys. You have Taiwan Walker, who has a sub-3 ERA right now. Now, he's probably not starting a postseason series, but you have to at least consider it, right? Remember, Noah Syndergaard started a playoff game for this team. Michael Lorenzen started a playoff game for this team in this era with these star players around. So stranger things have happened, but I'm not starting Taiwan Walker. You got to think about the young guys, McAble, if he's still here, and maybe he's up on the team and maybe he's throwing out of the bullpen, or maybe he's been an extra arm in the rotation late in the season. Does he get a shot? No, he doesn't quite have the experience yet for me, and he's not as highly touted of a prospect as Andrew Painter is. Painter, that's a guy you got to think about. Does Painter get a spot start in a series somewhere? We haven't seen him throw at the major league level yet, but if you project him out to being as good as people say he is, they may want him to do that. Like, we don't know what we're going to see. We're getting closer and closer. It's almost the end of May. It's May 29th. We have 2 more days, or I guess 3 if you count today, in the month before we get into June. And Painter, we're looking at July-ish. So crawling to the Andrew Painter debut date that the organization, not that they gave us a true date, but July-ish. We'll see. You may see something from July on that says, hey, Andrew Painter's got to get the ball in a postseason series. But the real intriguing guy in this conversation is, yeah, that's right. Aaron Nola still exists, folks. And he is on the outside of this playoff rotation looking in. Because if you're going to throw Wheeler game 1, Lazardo game 2, Suarez game 3, Sanchez game 4, well, then you know who throws game 5 if you need it? Yeah, Zack Wheeler. You're not throwing Nola out there in game 5. Like, you're not giving up a Wheeler start for a Nola start. That just makes absolutely no sense. So Nola doesn't really fit into the playoff rotation. Now, where does he fit? Can he go to the bullpen and be kind of one of those middle relief guys? He's not going to throw at the back end of the bullpen. His stuff is not going to play up enough. He doesn't have the velocity anymore, which is part of the reason why he's on the injured list right now and was not performing earlier on in the season, is because he does not have the velocity he used to, and he has not really figured out the way he needs to pitch this year because of that. He could be a middle relief guy. Him and Taiwan Walker could go hang out there in the bullpen. I mean, I don't know if he'd be willing to do that. I don't know if he'd be good at that. He doesn't really strike me as a bullpen type of personality. Now, I want you to imagine something real quick. This is not the point of this exercise, but I did just think about it. The real point was like show you who's getting the ball in what order, and then talk about the Aaron Nola on the outside looking in being one of like the franchise cornerstones for years. That's going to be a tough pill to swallow if it does play out that way. And I don't know who he jumps right now of those four guys. Now imagine this. Your bullpen in the postseason, because Jose Alvarado's unavailable, right? He's ineligible due to his PED suspension. It would be wild, but I wonder if the Phillies would do it. So you go Wheeler, Lazardo, Sanchez, Suarez, or Suarez, Sanchez, whatever you want to do with those guys. Those are your four starters. And then your bullpen is Strom, Kerkering, and Romano, obviously. Painter, Abel, Nola, Walker. Like, how wild of a bullpen would that be? You just have guys coming out that are like more of your bullpen are starters than are true relievers. That may be, that's probably not reality for the Phillies, but it may not be too far-fetched depending on what the Phillies do at the trade deadline. It also shows you, trade deadline, a starter's probably going to get moved because there's just too many cooks in the kitchen when it comes to the starting rotation at the major league level. The tough thing is you got to find a contender who also is willing to part with bullpen help, which is not going to be easy to do. So maybe it's one of the prospects that gets moved. It will not be Andrew Painter. I guarantee you he is not getting traded. Don't even bring that to the table. Mick Abel's a different story. But it is very interesting to see how things could be built out for the Phillies when they get to October, when it comes to who's getting the baseball in what game and who's left on the outside looking in. It's a way too early look at that. I understand. It's the end of May. So this stuff normally has a way of figuring itself out. But just a preview of where the team is at right now. Coming up next, we'll tell you where the team is at right now in the standings because, hey, we had a bit of an off day. Phils are still the best team in baseball. I just still love to check in on it. And the Mets did something funny yesterday. I'll tell you what, as we continue Locked On Phillies. Let's talk about Monarch Money first, though, because do you ever check your bank account and wonder where did all my money go? I did that after Memorial Day weekend. It's like, man, did I spend that much money down the shore? And the answer was yes. And it was between dining out and going down to the liquor store before I went down to the shore, like all the stuff that I needed to buy at the surf shop and everything. So cold, bought a sweatshirt. Listen, you can spend a lot of money over the summer, and that's where Monarch Money comes in. They're your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. No, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. When I started using Monarch Money, it really showed me where all my money was draining out to. Entertainment stuff, going down to the ballpark, drink some food at the ballpark. All that stuff. Now I budget smarter and save more. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals so you don't have to have multiple different apps for stuff. And managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com. Code LOCKEDONMLB for half off your first year. Go ahead and check them out at monarchmoney.com. Standings check time for the Philadelphia Phillies and for Major League Baseball in general. And by the way, the Mets, did they win yesterday? They had to have. They were playing the White Sox, right? White Sox stink. They were the worst team in baseball last year. They were last year's Colorado Rockies. Oh, really? The Mets lost 9-4? Darn. Well, what are you going to do? Can't win them all there, New York. So the division lead grows even further. Now, unfortunately, the Phillies actually no longer have the best record in baseball because they did not play yesterday and the Detroit Tigers won again. So the Tigers are 0.001 percentage points ahead of them in the win-loss percentage. They are 37-20. The Phillies 35-19. So not the best team in baseball right now by percentage or by win total or anything like that. They can get there with 2 wins today, so we'll see if they can do that against the Atlanta Braves. We will talk about that as the episode concludes. We'll preview game 2 of the series. Now, I want to look more at the NL East because we haven't taken a deep dive into the division, like who's alive and who's not. The Marlins at 13 back are dead. The Nationals at 10.5 back are dead. And part of that is quality of the team. Now, you know what's funny? The Nationals have won 25 games this year. The Braves have won 25 games this year. They're not that far off from each other. The Braves are 9.5 back of the Philadelphia Phillies in the National League East. And some people would look at that and say, 9.5 back, heading into June, they're going to have to do something crazy. Now, what I will say, and I made this argument on air on the radio and TV side yesterday, I still remember 2007, right? I'm not here to do this trash talk before everything's all said and done. Like, I know I just trash talked the Mets. I'm talking about the individual game of losing to the White Sox. I'm not saying, the Mets are dead, they'll never win the division, blah, blah, blah. No, I'm not saying that about the Braves either. And you might call me a coward. You might say, Connor, you coward. You got a 9.5 game lead. You don't believe the Phillies are going to hold it. Listen, I've seen this team have rough stretches of the season. I have. And I know that if the Phillies start to leak oil a little bit, those other sharks are going to smell blood in the water. So the Phillies need to stay the course. They need to make sure that over the remainder of the season, they continue to play winning baseball. They continue to fight to keep this consistency. That's where we've seen them lack in the past. That's where they cannot lack this year. The Mets can chase them down easily. The Mets are only 2 games back. And the Braves can still make a run at this thing, which is why this series is a big one. And this doubleheader today is very, very important for the Phillies to at least just take the series win. You got to take one today is all you got to do. But in division, the Phillies are in prime position. They're in the driver's seat, even if they don't have the best run differential. That's the thing I'm still looking at, right? They are plus 44. The Mets are plus 57. And run differential was something that we talked about on air over on the Fanatic side. And that's kind of something you have to take a peek at as far as best team in baseball. I asked this to Greg Caserta, who he works for MLB Network, but also kind of a local guy, did some calls for the Reading Phillies back in the day. So he knows this team inside and out. And I was like, one of our conversations was, is this truly the best team in baseball? Or is that just what their record says based on them playing some lesser opponents? And he brought up run differential. Just to check in on that again, the Yankees are plus 113. That's first. The Cubs are plus 95. That's second. Tigers plus 84. That's third. Dodgers plus 65. That's fourth. The Mets plus 57. That's fifth. Cardinals plus 45. That's sixth. The Phillies are seventh in run differential, and they're only 5 in the positive column away from the San Francisco Giants, and only 8 in the positive column away from the Houston Astros. So it's not like the Phillies are this team that is crushing a bunch of teams. They added that with their series in Colorado and their series in Sacramento. So that definitely helped, and I love to see them do that. But there are other teams that are winning more handedly than the Philadelphia Phillies. So again, this is going to be the conversation that really pops up as we get deeper into the season, because I don't see this trend changing. And part of the reason I don't see this trend changing is the pressure is not on the Philadelphia Phillies offense right now. Sure, would you like to see them score more runs? Absolutely. But with a starting rotation like the Philadelphia Phillies have, they're not really required to. They can go out there and score 2 runs and beat the Braves by 2 because, hey, Rangers throwing, bullpen's good. We have our big arms going in the pen. Let's go. Shut them down, right? You don't feel the need to run it up. Meanwhile, the Cubs are scoring 6 runs a game up there at Wrigley. And the Yankees have that Aaron Judge guy who is pretty darn good. But the Phillies are just this differently built team when it comes to run differential, at least this year. And maybe they'll have one of those seasons. I remember, was it last year? Was it last year or 2 years ago where they hit August and then they just had the 4th best home run month in the history of baseball, the best in franchise history. And there were questions about the offensive production. They just had a month where they tore the cover off the ball. Everything went out. And that could still happen, and that could really bump up their run differential, and they could start crushing teams. But the conversation that's going to happen at the end of the year based on this is, they won, but they won tight games. Is winning tight games an indication that you're not as good as your record says it is? Or is it a setup for a team that's going to be successful in the postseason, right? Does it get you more prepared for postseason baseball where you're going to have to win tight games? And the Phillies have experience doing so. So I don't want you to look too far into the run differential talk, but it is something that has been brought up by me on this show. It was brought up to me by Greg Lazardo of MLB Network when we talked to him. I'll let you know, by the way, Jason Stark, I'm going to get a chance to talk to him on the TV and radio side today around 4:25 in between the two games of the Phillies doubleheader. So I'll let you know what the latest from Jason Stark is on tomorrow's episode. It's crazy that tomorrow's already Friday. Short week with the holiday. But we'll go ahead and keep you updated on everything I'm hearing from the experts. I just wanted to take a look at the standings. And then in the National League, of course, the Philadelphia Phillies, they still have the best record in the National League at 35-19. They're a game up on the Cubs, 2 up on the Dodgers, 2 up on the Mets, 4 on the Padres, Cardinals, and 5 on the Giants. Before we get to the Brewers at 7.5, the Brewers come into town this weekend. So that's a team that's kind of middle of the pack. You should be able to continue to beat down on. Like, everything seems easy for the Phillies right now. It doesn't seem like they have any pitfalls waiting until they get to a gauntlet stretch, which we will look at when we get into June. There's going to be something that we're going to peek ahead to. One of the next Phillies off days. That'll be the first time you hear of it, but I've talked about it on the radio side with the dreaded gauntlet, the G word that killed the Philadelphia Eagles season a couple years back. And it's going to be a tough stretch for the Philadelphia Phillies end of June into early July. But we don't have to worry about that right now. Just enjoy the start of summer and kick back, because today the boys are playing too. What do the Phillies need to do to find a way to a series win or even a series sweep today as they take on the Braves for 2 games due to the rain out last night? We'll talk about it coming up next as we wrap up today's episode of Locked On Phillies. So here's the question. Is retribution coming? Retaliation. Is it going to happen? Well, there's a lot of factors at play. A lot of people are wondering if the Phillies are going to smoke a Braves player because Bryce Harper got hit. I don't know. I also don't know what Bryce Harper's status is for the games. He may be able to play, and if he's already back in the game, that makes you less inclined to hit somebody. Now, the Phillies didn't do it in Game 1 when the actual contact took place in inning 1, Game 1, right off the rip. Bryce Harper's first at bat, he wears one to the elbow. Not intentional. I don't believe it was intentional. I believe Spencer Strider's comments after the game. But what I will say is I've heard from multiple people, if somebody's going to wear one, it's going to be Wheeler who throws it. Wheeler's throwing in the night game, so we will see. I mean, you're going to have to hang on all day. With bated breath, you're going to be sitting there watching to see if the Phillies decide to throw at one of the Braves players. I don't think it's going to happen. I think the off day, the rain might have cooled off the tempers a little bit if there were any. And I think this is just baseball as usual. But it's not baseball as usual when you have the pitching matchup that you have late in this doubleheader. And it's also not when the Phillies play the Braves. There's always something interesting that happens. Now, Game 1, Christopher Sanchez is actually bumping up and taking the earliest start. So Game 1's at 105 today. And he's facing off against A.J. Smith-Shawver. The Phillies, they're favored minus 160 on the money line in this one, a 61.9% chance to win according to ESPN Analytics. And part of that is because Sanchez has just been better. He's got 3.17 ERA to Smith-Shawver's 3.67. He's letting less runners on base. He's striking out more, 65 Ks in 54 innings pitched. That's what's been so good about Sanchez. His strikeout stuff has been awesome. And they both have 20 walks, even though Sanchez has thrown 13 more innings. I mean, Sanchez is the better pitcher. A.J. Smith-Shawver, he's okay. He's a solid righty. They could give the Phillies some trouble. Might not, depending on the day. But you're going to need the lefties to step up, which is why it'd be really nice to have that Bryce Harper guy if he's available. But we don't know if he's going to be good with an elbow contusion. This one is kind of the turning game of the series, this Game 1 of the doubleheader, not just because it's the middle game, but you have Wheeler going in Game 3. So you feel pretty good. Like anytime you see Wheeler on the mound or you see that he's the scheduled pitcher, I should say, your immediate reaction is probably, oh, ball game, Phil's win. See ya. Like, don't even show up. Don't worry about it. He's going to like 1 hit you or 3 hit you or whatever, shut you out. Maybe give up 1 if you get lucky. You know, like, you guys are screwed is basically the thought process. When the other team sees Zack Wheeler on the mound, it's just like, okay, well, what in the world are we supposed to do against this monster? He's one of the best pitchers in baseball. And that's why game one of the doubleheader is important, because if you can take that, well, then Wheeler's got a chance to go for the sweep tonight. If you do not, well, then game two gets kind of tricky because you have a monster pitching matchup in game two. This is like the doubleheader is great because the first game is like the preliminary fights and like a UFC or a pay-per-view boxing event. And then you have the title fight later on at 6:45 at Citizens Bank Park. And that is Zack Wheeler against Chris Sale. There are so many different storylines to this matchup. Chris Sale, last year's Cy Young winner. Zack Wheeler, last year's Cy Young runner-up. Chris Sale hasn't had that great of the year. Zack Wheeler, he's been awesome. He's still hunting for that award. He is proving that he is much more consistent. Corbin Burns, not having a great year. Chris Sale, not having a great year. Zack Wheeler, the last 2 years, came in second place to each of those men in the NL Cy Young voting. And guess what? He's still doing it. Almost like he should have won one of those awards. And not the Chris Sale one. Corbin Burns, give him your trophy back. But all that aside about trophies and who rightfully deserves them, Chris Sale is still a very, very good pitcher, a very tough lefty. It's actually great that the Phillies are facing righty A.J. Smith-Shawver in game one and lefty Chris Sale in game two, because Chris Sale is a dude who is so tough against lefties. Very few teams even allow their lefties to face him, right? You try and get as many righties in the lineup as possible against Chris Sale. And you try and get as many lefties in the lineup possible if you're the Phillies against righty starters. So you go out there, you throw a bunch of lefties at A.J. Smith-Shawver in game one. Bryson Stott starts in second. Max Kepler starts in left. Brandon Marsh starts in center. All of this stuff. You want all the lefties out there that you can get. Kyle Schwarber in the DH spot. Hopefully Bryce Harper at first, but I doubt that he will play based on elbow contusion and how much pain he was in. We'll see. If not, well, I don't know what you do. Maybe, I guess, Bohm at first base, and then Edmundo Sosa plays third, but that's a problem that we'll cross that bridge when we figure out if Harper's playing or not. I have not yet seen a lineup. Let me actually double check and see if they put one out, because it's about 10 o'clock as I'm about to finish up recording this for you guys right now. So let's see if we just really quickly have a lineup. We do not. Bryce Harper is listed as day-to-day down here on ESPN, but I don't know if that means he's going to miss a game or not. Sometimes you can just go ahead and play. So not sure. But then in game two, you can flip over to a righty-heavy lineup where Bohm plays first, Sosa plays second, Turner short. I guess, well, trying to figure out who's going to play third is going to be tough then. I guess Sosa's got to play third, and then you have a situation, well, maybe Weston Wilson could play a corner infield spot, and then you could play Rojas and Kepler. Either way, you're going to have to find a way to Stott will probably still be in the lineup, and you'll play Edmundo Sosa at third with Bohm at first with Harper unavailable. I don't see them putting Schwarber at first. Maybe JT will go over there and play first base, and then you could play Bohm at third. You could see some weird stuff like that today with the doubleheader going on with no Bryce Harper. I'm realizing in the moment how tricky that defensive alignment's going to be. That's something to keep an eye on. But then it'll be Rojas in center, Weston Wilson in left, and sit down Kepler and Brandon Marsh and get that righty-heavy lineup out there and try and go to work against Chris Sale. It's actually nice that you can alternate because you like to flip-flop who's starting in the doubleheader to try and keep these guys fresh. There's also this tricky thing about the doubleheader that we talked about in yesterday's episode about managing the bullpen, where you can't, well, you can sell out for game one, but if you sell out for game one, you better damn well win it, because then you don't want to hang Wheeler out to dry and have him give a great start in game two and then have nobody to finish out the game coming out of the pen. So a tough day for management for Rob Thompson, and defensive alignment I didn't even think about, but that is going to be something that is difficult for him to contend with. So we'll see what type of a job Topper does. Most important players in both of these games are the starting pitchers. They always are in the doubleheaders. If you can go out and get 6+ innings, perfect. That's what we need to save the bullpen on a day where we've got to play two. Sanchez is capable of that. Wheeler is capable of that. And the Phillies are capable of hitting the baseball off the Braves pitchers. They are, even though they only scored 2 in game one. Strider was solid even with decreased velocity. I'm expecting a bit more of an offensive performance against Shawver, and then a grind-out pitching duel later on tonight. I think the Phillies and Braves split the doubleheader. I think the Phillies get out with a 2-1 series win. Right? How's that? We'll wash our hands. We'll move on. The Phillies will hold their lead in the division, and we'll be just okay with that. We'll see if it plays out that way. But either way, we're going to have a lot to react to on tomorrow's episode for Friday. So we will get into the doubleheader, and we'll also look ahead to the next series. The Brewers and Rhys Hoskins come to town. So, hey, no rest for the wicked, as they say. But that's all for today's episode of Locked On Phillies. Thank you so much for joining us. Once again, we come to you as part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Please make sure you're rating, reviewing, hitting that subscribe button on the YouTube, all that stuff. I really appreciate it. And I will talk to you next time on the next episode of Locked On Phillies.